Well, now joining us on A's Cast Live, you read him on ESPN.com. You see him on Sunday Night Baseball, and he's the host of the number one podcast in our business, Baseball Tonight. The great Buster Olney joins us from ESPN. Buster, how are you? It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. I'm great because as you and I talk, we're on the cusp of this really interesting World Series. So I'm doing well, and I'm down. As you and I were talking beforehand, I'm down in Texas after getting 5 inches of snow in Montana the other day. So it's a nice respite.
I think about the Super Bowls that I covered, and you had the 2 weeks, and it just seems like this monster layoff. And obviously, in our game where we play every day, to have the layoff they've had, it seems almost like a Super Bowl week where we're having a media day and everybody gets to talk down there in Houston. Just what do you think about the layoff, and how does it truly affect the teams?
Well, first off, I think the Astros have become the embodiment of the argument that rest hurts players, right? Because they had the bye, and then they rolled through their division series in 3 games, and then they rolled through their American League Championship Series in 4 games. So they've had a lot of days off. Basically, 7 games in 4 weeks, and yet they're playing really well. We'll see with the Phillies because they seem like that they were on such a roll offensively. All their guys in this powerful lineup were swinging the bat well. Rhys Hoskins, Bryce Harper. For me, the challenge is greater for them in part because they haven't had to deal with this. They've been playing day after day after day. Remember the Rockies team that finished up went on an absolute roll, and then they, after rolling through the National League Championship Series, they went into the World Series against the Red Sox. They couldn't get restarted.
Yeah, we talked to Dan O'Dowd about that, who's now on MLB Network, and it's just, you have that momentum, you have that it factor. You just don't know how long you're going to have that genie in the bottle. And I look at all the scenarios for this World Series. There's only one scenario I just don't see happening. I don't see the Phillies winning in 4. I don't see the Phillies winning in 5. Everything else I see could be on the board. Do you see it that way?
I guess I have a hard time seeing the Phillies winning the World Series. I got to be honest with you. After seeing how dominant the Astros pitching has been so far this year, Phillies are a great story. Who knows if they wind up stealing one of the 2 games here in Houston? Maybe that changes things. They go to Philadelphia with that great crowd, but I just keep on waiting for the Phillies bullpen to turn back into a pumpkin. Right? I mean, they struggled so much during the course of the year, 23rd out of 30 teams in ERA, and you thought going into the postseason that ultimately would take that down, or the Phillies defense, which we talked about all year as being a problem. It really hasn't hurt them so far. And I guess if the bullpen's good and they play efficient defense, maybe they could beat the Astros. But, man, the Astros are so good.
Bottom line is, for our fan base, we don't like them. It's become a rivalry. Obviously, where we are right now really doesn't matter. But a few years ago, it was definitely a rivalry. So whatever I say is not going to matter. But for everybody else in baseball, the majority of the guys from the scandal are gone. It's a different roster. They've turned it over. It's a different, Lunau's gone. Hinch is gone. So much has changed. Is this, if they do win, are people finally going to look past the scandal and give this team their due, who's now been in the World Series 4 out of the last 6 years?
You already know the answer to that. The answer is no. and I know I saw a poll, I think, on I can't remember where I saw this, but it was like 88% of the country is rooting for the Phillies.
Yeah.
Not only, I think part of it is because they are a likable group. I mean, how could you not like Carl Schwarber? Bryce Harper, clearly, evolving during the course of his baseball career, his baseball lifetime, which is really fun. JT, Nola, they're a fun team. But let's face it, even though they're all a small handful of guys left from 2017, the sins of that team are going to be forever held against guys who wear the Astros uniform. We've seen that in the past where, guys who weren't even on that team get booed in other ballparks. That's just the way it goes. So I think for the players, it's going to be important. I think for Jose Altuve, it's going to be important. For Bregman to win a championship past 2017. But for fans, that will never go away.
Especially in our neighborhood, I can tell you that. We've been talking to people from Philly, and I said to them from afar, this is what it feels like for me. It feels like, and this is how I'm going to give the Phillies a chance. They feel like that group of summer ball high school guys that are all pretty good. They come together. They're a puzzle that doesn't fit, but throughout the summer, they're having a great time. Continuity starts to happen. You start liking each other. You might be drinking beers after games. And next thing you know, you become pretty unbeatable. And there's just something about you. You have that it factor, and that you start taking down teams. And everybody from Philly goes, yeah, it kind of feels that way because, as we know, it didn't always go the right way. It didn't end the right way, the way they backed in. But right now, they have that mentality that we're not losing to anybody, no matter what anybody believes. They have this it factor. If I have to give them a chance, it's they've got that. It doesn't matter. It's us against the world, and they just keep doing it.
Yep, I completely agree with that. And someone you know well, Johnny Gomes,
Yeah.
played on a team like that with the Boston Red Sox in 2013. Remember that whole group with Gomes and
Yeah.
Shane Victorino and David Ross? They went from last place to first place. It felt like that they were just destined to win that year. And the other part that they really shared was the home run. Earlier today I talked to AJ Hinch, and I asked him, what for you is the biggest X factor in this World Series? And he said, the Phillies hitting home runs. And when he described the impact of their home runs, it really reminded me of like someone talking about the impact of a monster dunk in an NBA series, right? Where it's not only the impact of on the scoreboard, but it's also from the player to player, the crowd, how they get into it. That is the fuel now for the Phillies, the impact of their home runs, which they've been doing a ton of lately. It's something, with Rhys Hoskins and Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber with that 488-foot home run. The impact went beyond, the run that they put up on the board in that moment.
Since you're talking basketball, I've been saying this about Bryce Harper. He's really kind of our version of LeBron James. Now, I'm not comparing him to LeBron. I mean, LeBron's a global superstar. But from the standpoint of, as basically a kid, you're on the cover of Sports Illustrated. I mean, you're introduced to the world as a high school kid. So everybody's watching every single move. And like LeBron James has done a lot of good for all the communities he's been in. He's been a terrific guy. Bryce Harper's been the same way. Just talk about that, how we've known Bryce Harper since he was basically a high school kid, and it's very similar to LeBron.
Yeah, one of the cool things for you and I in covering this sport, year after year after year, is we now get to see guys from the beginning of their careers to the end. And one of the neat thing is that they change, not only as competitors and what they do on the field, but they change as people. When Bryce got to the big leagues, the perception of him was he was really cocky. I was at the game when Cole Hamels drilled him on purpose on a
Really?
Sunday night game. Yeah,
Yeah.
to test him, right? Is
Yeah.
this guy up for it? Other players didn't like him. Like Derek Jeter, there have been votes that Bryce Harper is the most overrated player in baseball. Well, what you heard from the Phillies people from the moment they signed him was he's up for everything. Whatever they asked him to do, charity stuff, appearances, interviews. And we experienced that on Sunday Night Baseball. We, asked him to wear a microphone. And you know how it goes. You ask the question, you assume that the superstar player probably is going to say no. Well, not only did he say yes, but he completely embraced it. We had him wear a microphone during the pandemic, and he was supposed to wear it like in the second inning, and there was a play against the right field wall, and the earpiece that he was wearing got knocked out, and you think, okay, that's the end of it. Well, he went back to the warning track during the half inning, found the earpiece, stuck it back in. He's talking to our producers like, hey, guys, can you hear me? I've got the earpiece back. And he talked to us for 8 innings during the course of that broadcast with no fans in the stands. And the score was like 11-1. They were losing. And you're like, oh, my God, like this guy gets it. And it's so cool to see the growth of Bryce along those lines, how, he signed with the Phillies. He embraced everything Philadelphia, embraced the challenge, embraced the crowd. It's remarkable how much he's changed during his career.
You had a tweet that I thought was great, and we talked about it here on this show. As you know, we take a lot from Baseball Tonight and from you because you do such an unbelievable job where, listen to the LA fans whine about the layoff and the bye. I love the idea. Hey, you can pick your path. You want to start playing right away. You don't. Who do you want to play? I love that idea. But in the end, going home early if you're the Dodgers, going out the way the Yankees did getting swept. Are you okay with LA and New York both saying, you know what, we're going to stay with the managers, we're going to stay with everything, and we'll go get them again next year? Are you okay with that?
I am, and I gotta tell you, and I know you're not going to want to hear this because you say with your fan base, you don't like the Astros.
Yeah.
All this conversation this week about fire Aaron Boone, and how about that decision you made with the bullpen in the sixth inning, and how awful was that? And Brian Cashman, I'm laughing. I'm like, I'm watching these two teams play, and they're not even close. The Yankees where they are now compared to what the front office envisioned with DJ LeMahieu out, Andrew Benintendi out, four members of that bullpen out. They weren't even close to the Astros. It wasn't even a competition. I think it would have been a shock to me if they had won, a game or two in this series. So I totally get why Hal Steinbrenner will keep those, Pete will keep Aaron Boone, keep, Brian Cashman in his front office. I think the whole conversation that seems to be around New York teams, you don't win the World Series, you suck. That doesn't reflect the way competition is. That's like an 11-year-old flipping the board and saying, I'm going to take my game and I'm not going to play anymore. I just think it's kind of silly. And with the Dodgers, look, they've evolved into, I think, the Yankees in terms of that expectation. Dave Roberts said to me during the course of the year, look, we know with the way our franchise has gone, if we don't win the World Series, a lot of people are going to be disappointed, including the players.
Dusty Baker, when right before Ray Fosse stopped broadcasting, we were doing these classic moments where we would call, it was like, friends of Ray's, whether it was like Jim Palmer, we did Dusty Baker, and the three of us would just have a nice long chat. So we had Dusty Baker on for like a half hour. And, I've known Dusty since his days with San Francisco, and he was a manager. Just what will it mean for him? We already know his greatness, player, an ambassador, obviously one of the coolest guys ever to wear a uniform. He's going to go into the Baseball Hall of Fame. But just what will it mean for baseball, for Dusty Baker to finally have that World Series trophy? As a manager, we know he did it as a player.
Yeah, I think that for folks in our industry, for writers, that it'll mean that they finally can put an end to that. They can check that box. So when they talk about his career, they can say, yes, he was as a player, he won a championship, had a remarkable career, and then as a manager, he had a lot of great teams. Players loved to play for him, and then in the end, he won a championship. But because you've gotten to know Dusty, really, when you think about the man's life, I think you'll agree with me. It'll feel like a very small thing. Because if you get somebody who can talk to you about smoking weed with Jimi Hendrix or hanging out with Henry Aaron and has this range of stories just about everybody. I mean, he's, and I say this with all due respect, I don't mean it literally with this character. He's the Forrest Gump of baseball, right? He's someone who's been around everything and knows everybody and is absolutely beloved by everybody who comes across him. I got to work with him on Sunday on Baseball Tonight. I feel like that when he makes his Hall of Fame speech, it's not an if, it's a when at this point, that whatever they accomplish this year in the World Series, that'll be a minor footnote to this man's remarkable life and career.
So safe to say you will not bet the family farm on the Phillies.
I will not bet the family farm on the Phillies. By the way, I sold my part of the family farm to my little brother earlier this year. So I probably should stop saying that.
We can't bet that anymore? I love that line. I love the fact you bet the family farm.
Well, I could bet it, but I think my little brother might now have a problem with me betting his property.
I just want to let you know we made sure we got the helmet out today for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I loved telling you that story, and I can still see it flying across my backyard, right? When I do those headfirst slides, imagining that team.
I'm telling you, this helmet, it was a giveaway. I can't remember what year it was. it takes so many people back to when they're growing up in the 70s.
Yeah, and I told you that team tortured me because I was a Dodger fan
Yeah.
at age 10, and yet I still bought that helmet because I thought it was so cool looking. And those teams were so much fun to watch, with the style and the speed and the whole thing. And so, yeah, that was among the first batting helmets that I bought in my collection.
Where we are in the cycle, we honored 72 last year, and this coming year, we're going to honor 1973. Of course, they took down the very surprised New York Mets, who beat the Big Red Machine. So we'll be celebrating all the 73 guys. We just had Raleigh Fingers on recently. We'll be celebrating all those greats. But, Buster, always an honor to have you on. Thank you so much. Keep up all the great work. We'll be following you during the World Series, reading you and listening to the podcast. And, of course, can't wait to see you in San Diego for the winter meetings.
That'll be an absolute blast. Thanks for having me, and I always love talking with you.